Will the courts pick the next president, not you? Will the courts do it? If the courts do it, how are people going to pressure the courts? And how is the Democrats, quote, street fight they're planning? Their words, not mine. How is that going to affect all this? Another Wall Street Journal article I saw today. I'll get to the one you've been asking me about in a minute. Will the courts pick the next president? If the election is close, the fallout could make Bush v. Gore look like an ice cream social. By the Wall Street Journal editorial board. It's in their paper today. I've warned you about this. Now, to be fair, because I don't like to mess around with my listeners, we've gotten a ton. Yesterday's feedback for Labor Day, yesterday's audience on the Coming Coup show was phenomenal for a holiday. Really incredible, like off the charts. And I think it's because the content has people concerned. I'll say again, this a few, very small, but a small percentage, maybe 4 or 5% of the audience, has sent me some negative feedback saying, hey, you're trying to scare us. I'm not. I'm just trying to prepare you for what the Democrats are telling you to be prepared for. If you don't want to be prepared, that's your choice. I don't think it's a great choice, but that is your choice. What are they preparing for? Ladies and gentlemen, they're going to use the disenfranchisement excuse. Oh, no, disenfranchisement. In other words, they're going to ignore legal guidelines, the courts, on ballots, and when they have to be in, they're going to be like, we don't need to worry about the law in these specific states. We can't disenfranchise anyone. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's an interesting word, disenfranchisement. I think it's a focus group tested word they use. Joe, if you show up after Election Day and try to vote at a polling location that is closed because the election was the day before, have you been disenfranchised, or is that a focus group way to describe it? You missed the deadline, right?
No, I missed the deadline. I blew it.
Okay, thank you. But that's going to be disenfranchisement. You don't believe me? From this Wall Street Journal article. Let's go to screenshot number 1. Say, quote, but in the twilight zone of 2020, everything's up for grabs. Deadlines, laws, election deadlines, all that stuff. Back to the article. Last Monday, a federal judge issued a preliminary injunction that orders Georgia officials to count all ballots postmarked by Election Day, even if they don't show up until 3 days later. What? The suit was filed by the New Georgia Project, a group founded by Democrat, thinks she's governor, Stacey Abrams.
Oh.
The judge, here's the key line. The judge, who's thrown the law out about election deadlines, expressed a reluctance, quote, to interfere with Georgia's statutory election machinery. But she concluded again that, quote, the risk of disenfranchisement is great. Ladies and gentlemen, it's not disenfranchisement if you try to vote after an election. It's called election fraud if you attempt to do that. If you make a mistake, you made a mistake, but you missed the deadline. These deadlines are being thrown out now. These lawsuits are all over the country. Again, if you don't want to be prepared for any of this and this content bothers you, I get it. I am not going to be left flat-footed on the ground, nor should the Republican establishment, Republican voters, Republican lawyers, the Republican president, the Republican House, or the Republican Senate as to what's coming, because you don't want to hear about it because you don't want to be scared. Again, I'm talking to a very limited number of the audience, but this is super important stuff. They're suing right now to have election deadlines completely thrown out, saying you'll be disenfranchised. You're not disenfranchised if you can't research online when the election's happening. All you have to Google is something crazy, Joe, like, when is the election happening? I know that's hard for some people to figure. Here, phone, computer, right here. That's what I'm always messing with. When is the 2020 election in my state? When? How hard is this? You're not disenfranchised. You're being disintellectual by not Googling or DuckDuckGoing or Binging or whatever the date of the election. The judge, we don't want to disenfranchise anyone who can't research when the election is. You watch. It's happening. I know this has been an ongoing theme in the show. They're going to sue over every deadline. Now I'll get to the deadlines that matter in a couple minutes. Second thing here. The dates will be disregarded as these court fights drag out. Forget these dates. The dates I'm going to tell you in a minute, throw them right out. And the Constitution said so. The law said so. The law says in Georgia, too, that you have to have your ballots in by Election Day. The judge is like, nah, We'll wait 3 more days because we don't want to disenfranchise people who can't get a ballot in by election day. What? Screenshot 2 from the Journal piece. Get ready for this one. Because someone emailed me and said, Dan, the Constitution is well prepared for an election controversy. There's laws. Okay, there were laws in Georgia too, folks. Quote, the fight will probably drag out in the courts. Say it's mid-November and absentee ballots are being counted in a key state. Although Mr. Trump retains a modest lead, mail votes are breaking 3-1 for Mr. Biden. Imagine what's going to happen here, folks. Perhaps the law in this jurisdiction requires ballots to arrive by election day. So there's a pile to the side of thousands of late deliveries. Again, people who couldn't figure out how to get their votes in on time. Some are missing postmarks. It's not clear when they were even mailed. Thousands more have been discarded for suspect signatures, but the rejection rates are higher in urban areas. Imagine that going through the courts. What do you think is going to happen? Come on. You read it. You know. You're the smartest audience out there. Your emails are genius. You give me the best ideas. Read that. Come on. What's in there? You know it. It's going to go to the courts. And what are the arguments going to be? Oh, it's racist. Urban areas. Of course, Democrats think only black people and Hispanic people live in urban areas because a lot of them are racist in and of themselves. They're going to say urban area disenfranchisement. Urban area disenfranchisement. They didn't get their votes in on time, but this is clearly racist. It's racist to disregard those ballots. The majority of them are Hispanic and black voters. This is going to be their right. I'm getting you ready for it now. So any of you married to a date, Dan, the Constitution said that, and the statutory law says the electors have to be decided by December 14th. Ladies and gentlemen, the Constitution also says you have a reasonable degree of privacy in your papers and your things, and that didn't matter to the Spygate people either. I'm deeply sorry if this bothers you. I'm just telling you they are already in the states disregarding election deadlines now. These people see the Constitution, statutory law, and state law as toilet paper. They don't take this stuff seriously. Now, a lot of you have been asking me about the article I discussed, I don't know what it was, 2 weeks ago. You know, I can never gauge time on this show. Probably was 2 years ago. No, it was about 2 weeks ago. I'm just messing with you. That there are specific guidelines the Constitution has laid out and subsequent statutory federal law about the presidential election. I'm going to read through those dates. The article is in the show notes today. It's there. I didn't put it in the show because I discussed it last week, but it's right there. It's the first article in the show notes. If you go to bongino.com/newsletter, that's where you subscribe to the show notes. Of course, it's free subscription. We'll send it the article come right to you. It even says, here is the article listeners have been asking me about the key dates. Let's go over some key dates here. December 14th. So the election's November 3rd. December 14th is a key date. That's when the state, each specific state, their electoral votes must be decided by September 14th. Must. If they're not decided by December 14th, what happens to that state's electoral votes? They're forfeited. Florida, God forbid, where I live, can't figure out its 29 electoral votes. By December 14th, you don't get anything. No soup for you. Remember that? The Seinfeld episode? Sorry. You're out. Why does that date matter? By the way, the statutory law Congress wrote pursuant to the Constitution is that the electors must be decided the first Monday after the second Wednesday in December. That date is December 14th. Tracking me? Again, These dates are all in that article. It's the first article in the show notes. Check it out. It's worth your time. Congress also wrote into the law a 6-day safe harbor provision. 6 days before that December 14th deadline, which means December 8th, where if there's a controversy about who won the state, you have 6 days to figure it out before December 14th. That's the deadline. The verdict is in December 14th, no matter what. You get it? If there's a controversy about who won, let's say in Florida where I live, you have 6 days before December 14th to figure this thing out. 6. If Joe Biden was doing it, 6. That means by December 8th, you better have an answer. Well, what happens by December 8th? And what happens between December 8th and December 14th? If there is no answer and the lawsuits are still going and nobody can figure out what to do with these ballots that weren't postmarked that are sitting there when the Democrats get, mark my word, it's going to happen. You can't disregard those ballots with no postmark. That'd be racist. Watch. It's going to happen. You'll regret not listening to this show if you want to be blinded. You'll be ready at least, and the Republicans damn well better be ready for this. Well, in that window, the state legislature has to decide. Let's say they can't come to an agreement. The vote count changes every day. There's arguments about this batch of votes with no postmarks, this batch of votes with bad signatures. Joe, you tracking me? The Republicans want these votes. The Democrats want the urban votes. The Republicans want the signature wrong votes. The Democrats don't want those votes. There'll be a lawsuit over every single vote. Mark it, track it, cash that check, and send it to your friends. I'm telling you with 1,000% certainty that's going to happen. So you have 6 days to figure it out, ladies and gentlemen. This is when the street fight is going to get worse. That's 6 days between December 8th and December 14th, where the states have to figure out who won. Remember this transition integrity project thing about the street fight we keep talking about? That's the transition integrity project run by the Soros affiliate, Rosa Brooks, where they're talking about forget the legal options. This is going to be a street fight.
Mm-hmm.
That's when the street fight is going to start. Not start. That's when the street fight is going to start getting really ugly if this scenario happens.
You just heard Dan Bongino.